is an Around the A offseason update with David Foote and Patrick Williams on the Sports Podcasting Network.
It is an Around the A off-season update, something new that we're trying to bring to you through the slow time of the American Hockey League off-season. David Foote and Patrick Williams here with you. We'll tell you that we will have full episodes of Around the A as we get quality guests and heavy news weeks throughout the course of the summer. But for now, Pat, we're going to stick to this format for a little bit and just throw out some quick hits and headlines from around the league.
Yeah, I think as with everybody else in all different fields and walks of life, we're having to play a lot of things by ear right now and kind of adjust on the fly. So this is something that you and I have come up with, and I think it should serve our needs, and the listeners' needs as we go through this. I mean, and just given like you said, the news cycle right now is. A lot of it is stop and start. You get a little bit of a burst of news, and then everything goes quiet for a few weeks, and then another burst. So we're going to try this out and see how it works. And just nice to be talking hockey again a little bit.
Yeah, we've been off for about a month here as things really slowed down. But luckily for us, the day that we decide to start this new venture, we get perhaps the biggest news we've had since the cancellation of the season officially. The AHL's Board of Governors meeting this week and deciding that the new season will not start before December 4th, 2020. Not a unanimous decision, I suppose, from what you understand, Pat?
No, I think if you think about it, you have two countries, you have 31 clubs, you have different provinces, different states. You have quarantines between states. Obviously, the border shut down. So pretty much you can go from one team to the next. And everybody's in a little bit of a different situation. Places that were hot spots a few months ago maybe have somewhat settled down. Other places have really taken off in terms of the number of cases. I was just checking the numbers for July 29th, Wednesday, and it was 68,000 new cases in the States. So kind of a long way from really getting a real hold on things, both here in Canada and the United States. So you have cases, starting to resurface in Canada a little bit, people going outside more, I guess, and it's just going to be difficult, I think, for a while. I noticed personally much more of a sense of optimism around the American Hockey League. I would say back in maybe early to mid-June, when it looked like some of the cases were starting to subside at least a little bit, and there was starting to be a little bit more of a stabilizing force there. But as these cases have taken off in the past 6 weeks, I think some of that enthusiasm, some of that optimism has been tempered a bit. And I think everybody now is, if they didn't before, I think they now accept that this is going to be a long haul. And we're really going to have to dig in here and just try to grind through this because this thing is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's not to say that, some steps haven't been made in various jurisdictions. I mean, here in Ontario, we've been under 100 cases, new cases, for 2 days in a row, and they're talking about sending kids back to school and getting hockey rinks open and starting play again. But that's not the case in most places, I would say, especially south of the border. And as you say, 31 teams across 2 countries. There's a lot to be figured out. In its press release on Thursday afternoon, the league said that they are working with all 31 member clubs and the public health officials in each of those municipalities and jurisdictions to figure out the next steps and decide how we're going to get back to play. That's something that Dave Andrews told us here on Around the A both times that we had him on recently. So there's obviously a lot of work being done. And I think, you mentioned the word optimism. A lot of people are confident right now because they look at what the NHL is doing in getting to play. We'll talk about the bubble and some AHL guys who are in there in a moment. But you put it out on your Twitter at PWilliamsNHL. The AHL is not the NHL, and there is not a chance that this league is able to do things the same way.
No, I mean, if you think about the cost of the NHL bubble, not in just one city but two cities. Imagine what it costs to rent essentially the Royal York Hotel in downtown Toronto for 2 months. Or to and then you have the other hotel there, and then you have the two hotels in Edmonton, and all the support staff and the security and obviously all the testing. I mean, you think about what testing costs, especially if you're testing large numbers of people multiple times a week, and all the disinfection procedures you have to go through. I mean, it's kind of staggering, really, when you start to really think of all the steps that have to be taken, and then what the costs that accompany that are. The American Hockey League it's a lean operation. It's the way it's built. It's the way it's designed. You talk to pretty much anybody in any front office around the league, and most of them wear multiple hats, and you're doing a little bit of everything, and everybody has to pitch in. And that doesn't really. There's not a whole lot of room there for trying to add managing the pandemic on top of that, and managing a bubble, and there's certainly not the financial wherewithal to make that happen. So the AHL's has to handle this in a much different way than the NHL, and I think trying to apply NHL logic or conventional thinking to the American Hockey League never works, even with something as simple as on ice issues or affiliations or things of that nature, to say nothing of a pandemic that really has rocked the entire world for the past 6 months. So there's been a lot of misinformation out there. Unfortunately, people like you and me have to kind of go in there and clean it up. But I would say just it's been said out there, get your news from AHL media. And I would say that much like back in March, where there was just a ton of misinformation flying around right around that March 15th time when everything was happening. There was a lot of cleanup that had to be done, and I think we had a little bit of a cleanup scenario here as well. So keep it tuned to our podcast, to our Twitter accounts. I think and other AHL media members. Pretty much we've had most of them on at one point or another this season. We're the ones that actually I think are dialed into the AHL and not just reading off a press release.
And that's the best part about this off-season update format. If there's a lot of news that happens one week, we could bring you 2 episodes of this. We can jump in whenever we need to, whenever big news breaks. And that's our goal here on Around the A, is to be there when those big stories break. So as Pat says, keep it locked to our social media at Around the A Pod, Twitter, Instagram. We're on Facebook as well now, the Around the A Podcast. And you won't miss any of the reliable news and information as this relatively unreliable situation continues to unfold because, again, we know that the season won't start before December 4th. As of right now, we also know that a lot could change before that point. So stay with us for all the latest on that. Let's talk a little bit about the NHL bubble, Pat. Teams are getting going officially here this weekend with the Stanley Cup qualifying round starting. It still seems strange to say, but a lot of AHL representation. One of the great spinoffs, I think, of the way that this has worked out is the expanded roster, 31 players allowed per team in the bubble, and that's led to some NHL clubs bringing up a lot of prospects to maybe get them some playoff action situation, which in a typical playoff run you wouldn't see unless there was a pile of injuries, but a lot of guys are going to be able to get looks here. Yeah,
I mean, I think things are chaotic right now, and you have players that are coming back that haven't played in almost 5 months, and will only have one playoff or one preseason game, I should say, before you jump right into playoff level hockey. So you're just teams are going to have to adjust quickly. They're going to have to adjust on the fly. There's not going to be a lot of time to sort of feel things out. There's not going to be time. Typically at the start of a season, right, you would play 6 to 8 preseason games. You would have been in training camp for a while. Maybe you have players who need 10 or 15 games to kind of really find their game, get their feet 100% under them, and really start to go up to full speed. Well, now this is kind of jump in and hit things running. So, a young player, a young prospect, maybe a Jake Bean or some of the great young talent that we saw around the league, guys that come in ready and able to contribute right off the bat are going to be a big advantage. And this is a chance. Really, there's no other distractions right now for NHL general managers and coaches. The entire focus literally is on what is happening within that bubble. And if you're a young player who's kind of been on that precipice of full-time NHL work, this is your opportunity. And the catch there is you really haven't been able to do a whole lot in the preceding months to get yourself ready, right? Because most players haven't had any real long-term access to ice. They haven't had long-term access to a gym and really haven't been able to truly train properly. So in some ways it's this great opportunity. And on the flip side, it's not the best circumstances to take that opportunity. But I mean, that happens for a lot of players. You take an opportunity when it comes, and you have to capitalize. And if you don't, those are the guys that end up finding themselves stuck in the AHL. So it'll be interesting to see who can really handle this. I think what we can conclude is that skill's going to be kind of dominant early on as teams get their systems down again and kind of get back on the same page. So if you can come in and maybe assert your skill level while everyone else is still trying to get their systems down, I think you really will have a leg up on the competition. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we really have nothing to go on. That's what makes it such a unique situation that you can't really harken back to past years and go on past performances. I mean, this is nobody's ever been in this situation whatsoever or anything even close to it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all unfolds.
Yeah, I think one of the neat things I went through and broke down how many guys made their Phase 4 roster compared to how many AHL guys were invited to the Phase 3 training camp. And you look at the teams that did not have strong NHL campaigns but managed to squeak in because of this expanded playoff. Teams like the Rangers or the Montreal Canadiens, they're both bringing close to a dozen AHL players up to kind of bolster their lineups. Even a team like Rockford and Chicago. Rockford has got 9 players that are on this Chicago roster for the play-in. Teams have had to really take a look at the system, at what they've got, and plan ahead to be in the bubble for a full 2-month period, despite the fact that they didn't have strong seasons. And, they've had to really keep an eye on what positions are important. Some of these teams have, 3 or 4 goaltenders on their 31-player roster just to be safe. Like you say, there's no previous experience to go on. There's no way to really plan, and it's been kind of interesting to see which NHL GMs have really dipped into the pot to bring a lot of guys in. I think the fewest that I saw was Bridgeport, and the Islanders has only got 4 AHL players or guys who spent the majority of the season in the AHL on their roster, and they had brought 8 to camp. A team like Carolina brought 6 Charlotte Checkers players to camp, put all 6 in the bubble. So it's been, like you say, interesting to see how teams are adapting and making use of what they have in the system here.
Yeah, and remember, I mean, as much as the NHL and the teams are trying to keep players healthy here, you do have to at least plan that you may have some cases of players coming down with this virus, and despite all your best efforts, it's a virus, right? And it can slip in there. And so you're looking at, look at goaltending, for example, right? Like most teams are bringing 4 players or 4 goalies. Winnipeg, or I should say Washington's bringing 3. Colorado's bringing 3, but for the most part, you're bringing 4 goalies because if something starts to go through a team, all of a sudden you may be down 2 goalies, 3 goalies, who knows, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing with all your position players, and so a lot of guys I think that maybe traditionally wouldn't have gotten much of a look. All of a sudden now you're not the backup goalie in the American Hockey League. You're the 4th string goalie in the NHL. And I think that's a very big difference. Now all of a sudden you're in the NHLI, you're working with the coaches on a daily basis, and you're in this strange situation where teams are going to be in the best of 5 right off the bat, and they're going to have to, if your goalie starts to struggle, maybe all of a sudden a coach has to make a change quickly, because we've seen best of 5 in the American League. It's a crapshoot sometimes, and you can get down really quickly, and before you know it, your season's over. Now take that and multiply it by how many factors over now with everything going on, all the variables that are coming in with this situation. So a lot of players that were kind of, maybe, I don't want to say forgotten in the American League, but overlooked now are within that NHL world. And this is a chance, maybe if you had a bit of a subpar season in the American League, you can come up and kind of wipe that all away and very least make a name for yourself. You're practicing well. You really get yourself back on that radar again. And that's what players want. They want to feel like they have an opportunity, and in some ways you won't ever get a better opportunity than you have right now. So, usually with any sort of bad situation, there are some silver linings. I think for some players who didn't get the chance to play in the Calder Cup playoffs, this is their silver lining coming right now.
Absolutely. We'll perhaps throw this breakdown of who's playing where on our social media over the next few days at Around the A Pod, as the NHL gets back underway, and lots of AHL flavor in the now extended and bubbled chase for the Stanley Cup. Last topic we want to hit here on our first ever Around the A off-season update revolves around Seattle and Palm Springs. It was last week that the Seattle Kraken unveiled their branding and their jerseys, which I'm a big fan of. Before we get to thoughts on that, though, Pat, any new news on Palm Springs? The last time we were on, there was a little bit of, I suppose, apprehension or disruption in the process to build the arena out that way.
Yeah, it's, talking to a few different people, it's just it's a really complicated situation right now. Just where things are at in terms of trying to get funding and, the markets and everything, right? It's not easy right now, and you're looking at what was obviously a very ambitious $250 million arena deal in downtown Palm Springs, which I can tell you, having been there, is there's a lot of money in that town. That's on hold right now, according to Amanda Ulrich, who we would like to have on. She's from the Palm Springs Desert Sun. Did a great job breaking that story back at the end of June. But that whole deal was a little strange. Originally, they were supposed to break ground in February. That was postponed. At the time, you start scratching your head. You're like, well, that's a little interesting, but okay. And then obviously March arrived, and all of this stuff with COVID-19 came down the road and kind of put everything on hold. And then that story that Amanda broke in June. And everything I know as of right now, it's still status quo. I spoke to a couple people recently. Question becomes now, 2021 is, if you're looking October, that's about 15 months out, right? So start doing the math there. I mean, even if you were to announce you're going ahead right now, you're building that arena, 15 months is, that's a tough fit. And
it's going to be a scramble, yeah.
to the point where it would be, even if you started on the road, it would be, I don't want to say it would be impossible, but it would be extremely difficult, I think is fair to say. So if you're the Seattle Kraken and Palm Springs is not on the table, well, now you have to think, all right, what are we doing for our AHL affiliation? And I know it's been a source of some real stress and angst within the Seattle franchise. Obviously, they've had a lot of other things going on with the name and marketing and everything else. But from a hockey side, this is maybe a little bit of an overlooked thing among the public, but certainly within NHL teams, having their AHL picture situated is a major, major priority. And right now, because of circumstances that are far beyond their control,
anyone's control
for that matter, they have to decide, okay, if not Palm Springs, then what? Do we look elsewhere? And if so, where? And if so, who's willing to maybe take on a team? And there aren't that many markets that are both available, have a sufficient building, are on the West Coast, which is everything I've been told is Seattle. That's important to them. They want to have an affiliate in the general vicinity of the West Coast. Where do you put a team, right? So Boise had been bandied about a little bit earlier on before they went with Palm Springs, and then that died. But everybody right now, in terms of professional sports, it's a difficult market right now. I think everybody's in a holding pattern. Everybody's trying to figure out what their next step is, but you're trying to do that with a complete absence of information for the most part. So I don't envy the people within the Seattle front office right now, because if this is not doable, they're going to have to scramble very quickly amid a pandemic, amid a very difficult business environment, and try to find an acceptable alternative. And right now, it's hard. I mean, nobody's really making any decisions right now, let alone taking on an entire new franchise. So stay tuned, I think, is the best way to put it. But it's a real shame, because the hopes there were so high. There was so much money coming in, and they had kind of a really nice unveiling, and then all this hit. And as with so many other things that coronavirus has impacted, hockey and the Palm Springs franchise have, at least for now, kind of been caught up in that whole mess. So this is something I think the league is going to have another headache on its hands.
Yeah, and one big thing for the Seattle franchise, for the Kraken to get off of their plate and deal with, but they have dealt with the jersey and the name and the logo. Pat, before we finish this thing off, what do you think? Do you like it, or is it not quite what you expected?
I like the logo a lot. It seems Seattle-y, if that's a word. The navy blue and the different shades of blue and the nautical theme. I guess I'm a little bit more boring in terms of my choices for names on Kraken's, a little bit off the beaten path for me, but it seems like everybody likes it. So, I mean, that's ultimately what matters. If the fans like it, and the response seemed pretty good, and it's probably going to sell a lot of jerseys and a lot of caps, and which is kind of the name of the game, right? So, but you're the jersey guy here. What did you think?
All right, I will give you my quick breakdown. I like the logo. I like that it's an S in tribute to the Seattle Metropolitans, who wore an S way back when. I don't think it necessarily screams Kraken. It could be misconstrued for a squid at the same time. There's nothing that makes it stand apart as to the size of a Kraken and the intimidation factor, but I do like the color palette. I really like the touch of red on the jersey to tie into the eyes that are mixed into the logo. I think they did a great job. Like you, I was a little, not necessarily put off, but not right away on board with the name Kraken. But I think it's going to grow on me, and the more you say it, the more you get used to it. So I think it's going to grow, and as we've already seen, fans everywhere seem to be right on board with it, and I think they're going to make a lot of money, as you say, off jersey and merchandise sales for sure.
Yeah, based on that initial early response, even on Twitter, which it's hard to keep anybody happy there. People seem pretty positive about it. So, but you're so right. I mean, whatever you name it is. I mean, I wouldn't want to have to make that decision because it's such in many ways a permanent decision, and you have to get it right the first time. And if you don't, you don't want to be going back to the drawing board in 5 or 10 years. I think the main thing I look for with any logo is, will that hold up in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? And I think the Seattle logo should hold up well. What you don't want is a situation where, you remember back in the 90s when teams were just going kind of crazy with the logos and way off the board and ended up with some situations where they had to, a year or two later, completely scrap it and find a new look. So I think if you can keep something long term and build some tradition around that look, that's the overall goal, and make your fans happy. And if the Seattle fans are happy, then I think in the end, that's all that really matters.
Yep, they're off to a good start there in Seattle. Again, still having to deal with what's happening in Palm Springs. The NHL is off to a good start in the bubble. No positive tests. Lots of AHL players taking part in that tournament, or at least eligible to. And the league off to a good start, I guess, when it comes to planning the start of the new season. They've at least set a tentative start date of December 4th to give them some time to figure all this out and see how things are going to go. And I think we're off to a good start on our first Around the A off-season update here with David Foote and Patrick Williams on the Sports Podcasting Network. Again, stay tuned to our social media at Around the A Pod. We don't have a set schedule of when these will come out, but we will let everybody know on social media before they're released, so you can make sure to tune in. Also, subscribe to the podcast on the sportspodcastingnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Around the A with David Foote and Patrick Williams, and you won't miss an episode if you do that. So we hope you'll stay with us as this offseason continues. For now, we'll say goodbye. We'll talk to you next time on Around the A on the Sports Podcasting Network.
This has been an Around the A offseason update on the Sports Podcasting Network. Stay up to date on the latest news and notes from the American Hockey League by subscribing to Around the A wherever you get your podcasts. And find us on social media at Around the A Pod.